What I'd like to start talking to you about first is probably the most important thing that you deal with in boxing, and that's the boxing stance. That's where any fighter coming in, beginner or otherwise, builds everything off of the boxing stance. So the first thing we want to look at, and I'll just tell you right now, let's make the correction that if I refer to the left foot or the right foot, if you're a southpaw, just reverse it the other way. I'll try to make it a point of referring to it as the lead foot or the back foot, but in case I don't, just make sure that you make the switch in case you're a southpaw. The first thing you want to do, and obviously the most important thing, is to have a good, solid, comfortable stance when you're in the ring. And there are a few key important factors to doing this. Number one, and the most important thing you have to remember, is the foot must always be in front of the head. That's probably the most important thing you're going to have to deal with. Anytime you let the upper body or the head get over the foot, that's when you're dealing with a problem of having really bad balance. So what you want to make sure is that the foot is always in front of you, nice and comfortable in front. Your foot should be slightly angled, whereas almost the side of your foot is pointing at your opponent. You don't want it full straight on, just a little bit slightly turned. So there's a slight angle in your hip area, and it's in front of you. The back foot, and if I can use an imaginary line right down the middle, is that each foot is on the opposite side of the line. So if we had a line coming straight down the middle, you'll find that this foot is on one side, the other foot is on the other side, meaning that the toe is here, lines up almost with the heel of the other foot. The other thing you want to make sure of, as you can see from here, is to keep the back heel up. That's also vitally important. That allows you good balance, allows you to spring forward, move back, keeps you on the balls of your foot. That's very important. You don't want to get into a stance where you're flat all the time. That nullifies your movement a little bit. Again, as for the distance between, and a lot of people get confused in this, thinking that it has to stay approximately shoulder width, and then you'll find fighters going like this because they know that their foot is not there to support them. So actually, in fact, you can look at any fighter you want to see, freeze frame at any motion, it's usually wider than shoulder stance. It has to be wider to be able to offer a certain strength and a certain support. And that's very important. So a little bit wider than shoulders, feet offset on each line, front foot is pointing at the opponent, and that's a pretty good balance from there. So you're pretty good there in a good stance, going left, going right. That feels pretty comfortable. Next thing you want to do is you want to show the fighter where to put his hands. The ideal position and the most basic position is just a high guard, held high, almost at eye level, forearms facing the opponent, and elbows in tight. You don't want to be out here. You don't want to have the hands down here. This is pretty much your basic stance where you've got good protection on this side, good protection on this side. You're able to see the punches coming down the middle where you're able to parry and block well, and then you can move from that position very, very comfortably. So just to recap, you've got the foot out in front of you, make nice and solid, not too much of a bend in the front knee. Now that's another thing you want to make sure you look at here is you don't want to be in this kind of a position where the knee starts bending over the foot. That is equally as bad as having the head falling over the foot as well. So you want to make sure that it stays out in front of you, back heel is up. The weight can either be on the front or it can be on the back. Different situations, different fighters, it can alter. Very rarely will you find it absolutely dead center in the middle, because now you don't have an advantage of going forward, going backwards, going left, or going right, because you're kind of stuck in the middle. So you can have it in the front, a lot of good counter punchers, work off the front foot, some work off the back foot where you can just lean back and then be able to throw. So it's either a mixture or one or the other, but very rarely is it in the middle. What I'd like to do is bring Carolyn in now to kind of get Carolyn, come on in. What I'd like to get Carolyn to do is kind of show you what we talked about earlier in terms of the stance and get into the position. I've put down a piece of tape here to kind of give you an idea of where you want to be positioned. So Carolyn, if you could get into your stance right there, and we'll just point out a few things. Right from there, that's pretty good right into the stance right away. As you can see, her back heel is up. I can put my hand on it. The weight is on the ball of her foot. The line splits both sides, so that gives you an idea of where you want the boxer to be. She has to be sure not to get this knee bending over the front foot. I'd probably move that up to here a little bit, you know, move it forward. Now and feel the pressure on the ball of your foot. That's where you want to feel it. You don't want to get heel heavy and have it pushing into the ground. That's good. She's got a nice stance there. She's turned slightly, her hands at eye level, forearms facing the opponent. From there, you're in a pretty good boxing stance that's pretty much going to allow you to do whatever you want. Move right, move left, forward, backward, and always staying in an on-guard defensive position. She's able to block shots very well here. Everything's protected down the middle. She's able to protect the solar plexus. She's able to protect against the liver shot. The arms are well. Everything there can execute good punches, good balance, and a solid stance.